Welcome back to They Did What? Your source for the internet's craziest and most entertaining stories, where I go over them, analyze them, and on occasion, make fun of them. Today, gonna go over a story titled, She Cheated on Me with the Guy That I Thought Was Her Cousin. And guys, this story is about a young guy. Looks like he's in his early 20s. And he shares this story. This is about something that happened like 20-some years ago, or even longer. He had this girlfriend for like a year and a half. Thought everything was cool, as per usual. And lo and behold, there was a lot of suspicious behavior going on. And you're going to see here, eventually he finds out that, no surprise, she was cheating on him, but stringing him along nevertheless. And when this guy figures this out, he definitely comes up with a creative way to get even with her. And believe me, when you first hear what it is, you're going to think it's one thing. But actuality, it's something else. There's an even more ingenious plan going on here. Quite funny when I get to it. So anyhow, guys, without further ado, I'm going to jump right into it. It says here, this is a throwaway account because I'm not proud of this, but it seemed like the thing to do at the time. This happened in 1998, give or take a year. I was about 22 years old and had been dating this girl for about 1.5 years. She was amazingly gorgeous, smart, and funny, so I was pretty crazy about her. Well, that's the first mistake right there. She's up on a pedestal. She was only 1 year younger than me, but she still lived with her dad, and he was really strict. Well, you're going to see there's a reason for that. He has a bunch of rules for her, including curfews, even though she was 21. Amazingly, he thought she was a virgin. But I wasn't her first. Eventually, he figured out we were having you-know-what and told her she couldn't see me anymore. Yeah, good luck there, Dad. We continued dating, but it was much more difficult because she was always sneaking. She would often use her cousin as an excuse to get to me, but she would frequently go to his place for a while so she could have her cover story. She said they had been really close since they were kids, so this was normal. Eventually I found out that her cousin wasn't actually her cousin. He was her dad's best friend's son, but her story was she had always called him cousin and thought of him as a cousin. I started noticing more and more suspicious things and things that seemed unusual. So I got really suspicious. This is kind of starting to sound like a lot like a movie you might see on one of those websites called Something Hub. The girl and the cousin. One day she told me she was having lunch at a certain restaurant and would then come over. Shortly after that, I got a message on my page and said, let's meet at Red Lobster at 12. Then I got another message telling me that message was actually meant for her dad. So she's messaging the wrong person here. I jetted over to the restaurant and spotted her car, and I parked way back. Another car pulls up. Her cousin gets out. They hug and kiss and go inside. So his suspicions were accurate that something was going on with her cousin. I went back home to wallow in my misery. I canceled our date for that day, but I didn't tell her what I knew. I soon came up with my evil plan. I must tell you about an incident that happened earlier in our relationship. One day, she was getting dressed and I snapped a picture of her butt with an old Polaroid. It was just a close-up of her butt and there was no way to ID her from the picture. I didn't think she would care at all. She got insanely mad. I'd never seen her so mad. Well, in all fairness, I can't blame her. I wouldn't want anybody snapping a picture of me butt naked either. She was ready to fight for that picture, but I made an effort to keep it from her. She started trying to rip it up, but couldn't. I told her to hand it to me, and I would cut it up. She gets a pen and starts making it, and finds the scissors and cut it up. I burned the remains in front of her. She stayed mad for a while and lectured me over and over how she did not want any nude pictures of her to ever exist. I can't stress enough how much she hated the idea of anybody having nudes or her. She was horrified. Again, you can't blame her. But wait till you see what this guy does. She didn't talk to me for about a week, and we almost broke up. But she finally accepted I didn't really think it was a big deal, and it wouldn't bother her, and I would never try it again. Moving on, I had my plan together. We made plans for her to come over to my place. I was renting a decent house with my best friend, but lived like a bachelor. Very little furniture in my room, and I had a bed, a computer table with a chair, a dresser, and an alarm clock on the floor by my bed. I went and got an extra chair from the kitchen and placed it at the foot of my bed. I got another alarm clock and put it on the chair. I intended to make it look obviously out of place. She came over and we had you know what. I kept my cool and strung this along for another 2 weeks or so, having you-know-what 2 or 3 times per week. It's amazing knowing what he knew. He was able still to be with her, but this is part of his master plan, his dastardly plan. I made a point to do different positions and try to keep her angled in a way that the alarm clock was looking directly at her. What could be in the alarm clock watching this whole scene here? Keep in mind that webcams existed back in 1998. I wanted to keep it going, but decided enough was enough. Right before we left on the last day, I unplugged the clock, sat next to my computer, and carried the chair to a different room. I made sure she saw me, made it look like I was just cleaning up. I started getting cold feet about my plan because I knew how mean it was. I decided to wait a day, which turned into 2, and finally, after about 1 week, I decided to call and comfort her. I still wasn't sure if I was going to take my revenge or not. I made the call and told her I knew she was seeing her cousin. I can't remember his name. She denied it, of course, but I told her that anybody told me that they saw them kissing. Well, of course she denied it. That's usually how it goes. She finally admitted to it, but claimed it just started this week. I asked, how can you F your cousin? She said, he's not really my cousin. We argue a bit, and I tell her that I've known for a month. Then she tried to turn it around on me and not saying something when I found out that she really made a really smart-ass comment that I can't remember. She twisted around on him, made him out to be the bad guy. Gee, how many stories have I done where that situation has come up? But wait till you see what happens now. I then told her that there was one last thing that she would really want to know. And this is a little... This is his conversation with her. He says, do you remember that alarm clock sitting on the chair in my bed? She says, yeah. He says to her, ever wonder why it was there? She says, not really. He says, think about the last times we had you-know-what. How we did doggy at the foot of the bed, cowgirl with you facing the foot, and so on. Her, what the F are you saying? He says, it was a effing spy cam. You disgusting, causing effing cheating B-word. I slammed my phone down. I had called from a payphone for some reason. My pager blew up for the next several hours. It didn't stop vibrating for a solid 30 minutes before I turned it back on. My phone home was lit up with voicemails. So this is the girl that went crazy when he snapped a Polaroid of her butt and you couldn't see who it was. You heard it. And now he's telling her that for weeks now they've been hooking up. He's got webcam footage of her doing the dirty deed. You can imagine her freaking out here. Her messages started with screaming and crying, then threats, then begging, then offering bribes, and then she would go right back through the same cycle. The next day she came to my house and knocked on the door for at least an hour, but I didn't answer. The calls messages kept coming for weeks, even though the frequency died down a lot. She also came to my house a few more times, but I never answered, and sometimes I wasn't home. So he's keeping this going for weeks. That's some serious revenge going on here. I finally answered a phone call, but when she started asking for the tapes, I told her I didn't know what she was talking about. I listened to her beg, cry, plead, and I would eventually chime in with I don't know what tapes you're talking about. I hung up and never spoke to her again. The calls and the messages eventually stopped, and I went on with my life. There never was a hidden camera. But she doesn't know that to this day. It was just an old radio alarm clock that looked just clunky enough to pass as a spy camera if you aren't paying any attention. I grew to regret it because it probably tortured her for a long time, and it only took me about 6 months to get over my broken heart. The end. That is pretty funny there. I mean, this is a quick one, guys, but I saw this afternoon. I thought it'd be a really good one to cover, but there never was a webcam there. There was never anything like that. He just made her think it was there, and because he saw how crazy she went over that Polaroid, he was having some fun with her. Now, one could argue who was worse in this situation, but hey, you know what? They're together a year and a half. She's stringing him along while she's doing her cousin. I think a little payback was in order. And again, he didn't record anything. He just made her think that. That's what makes this really funny here. But anyhow, guys, that'd be a good one to cover. Quick video. So, all right, guys, that is it for today. Be sure to comment down below. Let me know what you think about this particular story. Guys, let me know in the comment section. Have you ever done anything, any diabolical revenge like that where you didn't actually do anything illegal, but did something pretty funny like that? I'd like to hear about that. And, of course, any other crazy type of stories that you may come across online, things that you'd like to share, by all means, email it to me, and I'll certainly cover it in a future video. And be sure to like the video, share it with your friends, and subscribe. And I'll catch you next time.